Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original KState sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to this edition of the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and another Fitz, it's confusing. My nephew, Ethan, making his podcast debut with us because he knows his women's basketball. Our subscribers that go Powercat know that pretty well because he shares that knowledge on our message boards all the time. Volleyball also is his thing. So we've got some alternate coverage over there at Wabash Station. But today we're here to put him out in front of the public. How's it feel? You're in the basement, but I'm like metaphorically letting you out of the basement.
This is as close as I'll get. Let's be honest.
Okay.
I'm not allowed out of the basement.
Yeah, I know your mom all too well.
Yeah,
she's not a nice person at all.
No.
Let's get to it. As you know, if you've watched the other editions of this smaller, different type of Powercat podcast, we take your questions from Wabash Station from our VIPs, just like always. Ethan, your coach's performing better than my coach, and then we answer them here for all to hear. But I asked for women's basketball questions, and I ended up with a bunch of Ayoka Lee questions. Shocking.
Yeah.
But we'll use those as a starting point. But let's get going here from Kevin316. Let's bring it up. How much of a challenge will it be for the team to be without Ayoka Lee for whatever period of time it is? They did this last year, E. They're back, but I feel like they're built better for it this time around.
Yeah, no, they 100% are. Last season, they actually did really well without Ayoka. I think they went about 6-2. Had a big win on the road at Baylor last year, where Eliza Maupin showed what she's capable of, and I expect much of the same. I think we'll see a heavy dose of Maupin in place of Ayoka, even though this season they do have the depth at center with Kennedy Taylor and Amani Lester. But I think they like what Eliza brings with her length. The Big 12 this year weirdly isn't as physical as it has been in the past. It's a lot more guard play, 5-out style offenses, but it's still nice to have the option of a player like Kennedy Taylor who can come in and be physical in the paint with teams like TCU, Baylor, that are going to run the bigger style centers and forwards.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maupin is just such a different type of player. It's got to really mess with the opposing team, doesn't it? I mean, you go from having to cover a true post, a dominant post, to just a hyper athlete.
Yeah, I mean, she has intangibles you can't teach. I mean, 6'4", she can run the floor. If you watch just transition play, she's always the first one down the floor. K-State loves abusing that. You'll see it a lot more, especially against teams coming up like TCU, Baylor, Colorado. They're just going to have Eliza run the floor, and you're going to see a lot of passes go over the top to Maupin because she's going to be faster than the forwards because of her crazy athleticism. Another thing this year with Eliza is she's a lot more physical. Her physical game plays a lot better. She's not afraid. We saw it against Arizona State. She went from guarding a massive player to guarding a 6'7" forward and didn't miss a beat. So that's a big thing that's going to help her this year is her physicality has gotten a lot better.
Okay, let's move on to the next one from GPC legend I Like Pickles Cat. How limiting will Lee's absence be for the women's team, and how does that impact postseason play? They ran into problems last year without Lee in the postseason. Again, I feel like this team's a little bit better equipped for what might lie ahead.
Yeah, Mitty killed it in the portal, as everyone knows. Tamira gives you, I mean, Gabby was a great player, but Tamira gives you scoring at every level. She's shooting about 48% from three in Big 12 play. Then you have Kennedy, where K-State last year, the only backup center was Amani Lester, who was a freshman. But this team is still capable of hosting the NCAA tournament. There's a lot of they have room to make errors. This isn't a team that if they lose one or two in a row, it's over. They're going to be a 7 or 8 seed. Right now, it's them and TCU for the Big 12. There's only one team, which in Baylor, who's even within a game of TCU and K-State. they have room to make errors, and they're going to make errors with the absence of Ayoka, but they are still highly capable of A, winning the Big 12, and B, being a 2 or 3 seed or even a 4 and hosting again this year.
So I'm going to be honest. I'm usually not a big fan of the big lumbering center. Honestly, Ayoka is, but her skill set is so high. She's not just a big physical presence. She does everything. She was so well coached as a young person, and then coming into KState, it all shows up. She keeps the ball high. She rebounds well with possession. She doesn't overreach or do anything bad on rebounding or defense. But let's bring this one up now from Exhausted Nihilist. Besides the obvious scoring in the paint and blocking shots on defense, what is the next most valuable part of Yoki's game that Mitty's crew must fill in? I like that question a lot.
Reliance. K-State, the last, 5 years even, if the offense isn't working, you throw it into Ayoka, and just finding that next step is going to be, okay, there's 10 seconds left on the shot clock. What's the game plan? We can't just dish it down to Ayoka and have her go to work on whoever. And I think you're seeing that a lot more this year, especially with the guards. You see players like Taran Walker, her ability to just drive one-on-one is impressive. Serena has been deadly in the mid-range. She's not afraid to post up on smaller guards. And that's going to happen more without Ayoka, because you don't have that reliable, get out of jail free card in Ayoka anymore. So it's got to be a lot more. There's got to be more purpose in the offense without Ayoka, because without Ayoka, you don't have that emergency. Just throw it in there and something good's going to happen.
Does Poindexter offer them kind of a go-to person? Serena Sundell can be that too, but Poindexter is an offensive threat, and she hasn't had to do that as much here because there are other offensive tools in the Jeff Mitty tool bag. But without Lee, we saw Poindexter really step up into that scoring breach.
Yeah, even in Big 12 play, Meyer's the top scorer of K-State in Big 12 play. Before she came to K-State at Tulsa, she really wasn't a great three-point shooter. I think over her career at Tulsa, she shot around 28% from three. So adding that, she is highly capable of playing inside the post. It's just when Ayoka's in there, there's no point to throw another player in there. So she has to play around that. And I think that's why we saw her kind of go cold for a little bit, was adjusting to, I can't just sit here in the paint or take a player one-on-one because Ayoka's there. So but without Ayoka, I think we're going to see a lot more of her using the three ball as kind of like a distraction, pull players out, and then she's going to be able to go one-on-one a lot more, which she likes. She did a lot at Tulsa. She's great one-on-one, whether you're starting out in the three-point line or starting right on the edge of the paint. She's great one-on-one. Without Ayoka in there, and with Eliza moving around a lot more to pull centers around, I think you're going to see a lot more of Tamira inside the paint, inside the arc. But she's still a great three-point shooter.
Yeah, she is. Speaking of three-point shooter, Sides is really upped her game. Going with Walker, you've got a true backcourt there in many ways that can distribute and shoot and create. And I feel like that's just at a much higher level than this team was a year ago, because Gregory was almost like a power guard. I don't know how to totally describe Gabby's game, but she was one hell of a shooter, a very smart basketball player, but she wasn't that kind of creator we're seeing, and deep three-point shooter Sides brings to the table.
Taran, last year at one point, Taran had the top assisted turnover ratio in the country. I think right before Big 12 play started as a freshman. And then this season, she comes out as the best three-point shooter in the country. But the last few games, we're starting to see her use that she loves to just send players flying with her fakes. She's faked out, I don't know how many players at this point, just faking a three. She's getting a lot better at driving in the paint, pulling a defender, and then dishing it off. She's a great rebounder. She's the shortest player on the roster by at least 3 inches.
Mm-hmm.
But she's, I think, maybe 4th on the team or 3rd on the team in rebounding. Her development as it continues, if she's going to shoot the three at 45%, distribute 4 assists in about 20 minutes of play, off the bench, that is deadly. Yeah, just as a sophomore too. She has 2 more years after this year where she could just become one, maybe not Serena level. I think Serena is one of the best guards to play at K-State.
Yeah.
But Taran has that ability to be that 3-point sharpshooter that can dish the ball. She has all the tools to be a really good player.
Sundell's like almost a throwback to pre-3-point line basketball. I mean, she doesn't predicate her game around that. So many of this generation, they build around that arc, whether it's the men's distance, women's distance, but she doesn't. She plays inside of it, outside of it. She can shoot from beyond it, but that's really not her game. She didn't develop that. She's more of a creator and mid-range scorer, as you mentioned earlier. It's kind of refreshing for us olds, us old people, like to see a little of well-rounded basketball skills, and boy, she's got it.
Yeah, she can do everything. Guarded Maya Torre, the center for Utah, when they went to Utah. She had a 26-point triple-double. She's tied the school record in assists in a game twice this season. Probably should have broke the record in both those games too. I mean, she's averaging, I think, 8.9 assists per game in Big 12 play while averaging almost 14 points a game. I mean, Ayoka's a big part, but Serena runs that thing. I mean, scoring, dishing the ball. She can be a good rebounder. She's one of the best defenders, I think, in the country at the point guard position. She blocks the ball. She can guard 1 through 5. I mean, she is just a unique guard that you don't see anymore.
Yeah, she really is. Let's get to the final one here as we come down the home stretch from KSU number 1. Am I wrong to think that with Ayoka out, we will still win the conference? TCU is awfully good. And as you mentioned, Baylor's hanging around as, regarded national power. But I do feel like this team is equipped to still win. It's going to be challenging, but I think they can, more so than last year. What do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, of course, it helps that Texas and Oklahoma are gone, and both of them are top 10 teams, in my opinion. But the thing with this team that I worry about is, of course, TCU. The nice thing is TCU comes here
right
on a weekend and probably a pretty solid Bramlage. And the people are going to be quick to point out Sidonia Prince, who is a 6'6", really good center. But she's scared of physicality. She does not like the physical game for her size. She wants to use her athleticism to and I think Maupin against Sidonia might actually be a really good matchup for K-State. Maupin's going to be able to follow her around, guard her in the mid-range. Maupin's a great rebounder. And then Baylor is a good team, but they're not as good as they were last year. This team beat Baylor at Baylor without Ayoka last year. This is K-State's conference to still win. It's just, it also depends when Ayoka comes back, if she comes back. K-State's toughest stretch this year will be like the last 4 games. You're at West Virginia, you host KU, you host Baylor, and you're at Iowa State. If you have Ayoka back for 3 of those 4 games, I still think this is K-State's conference to win or lose.
Probably would agree. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. I kind of feel like this was not inevitable, but they were trying to manage her workload, trying to keep her as fresh as possible, spreading out the minutes a little bit. But unfortunately, I think we're seeing a great basketball player's body just kind of break down. And to have this injury again, feet and knees just don't work sometimes for certain women in basketball for whatever physiological reason that is way too complex for me to understand. But this one stings. I mean, everyone was hoping to get through this season without it happening. And almost at the same point as last year, it's happened again. It sucks.
Oh, 100%. I mean, this year alone, looking at her, she's not even averaging 20 minutes a game, where every other season she's played at K-State, the least she averaged was last season, where she averaged 27 minutes a game. They were already trying to load manage it because I think they kind of knew that her body's kind of just not the same as it was, injuries, and it happened. It sucks. I mean, not only because this is supposed to be probably the biggest chance a K-State team's had at making a national championship in who knows how long, but also Ayoka has been a staple of this K-State program since pre-COVID. I mean, she's been around a long time, and she could have left 3 years ago, gone and played at South Carolina, at Notre Dame, at these big schools, but she said no, stayed at K-State. She wanted to win at K-State. And it's rare these days. I mean, it's really rare to find a player like Ayoka who's that good, who could go play. She could go play pro 2 years ago. Instead, she's still here. She wants to play for K-State. So it stings emotionally that a player like her has to go through this, especially in arguably the biggest season since 02-03 for the women's basketball program. It sucks, and I hope we see her again, and it might be one last hurrah at the end of the year for possibly her career, because even though she could play in the WNBA, I think teams are going to say that's an injury risk, and we probably shouldn't waste a spot with that. So we'll see, though. It sucks. It definitely sucks.
What's up for they're off this week, right? Until Saturday?
Off till Saturday, then they're at Boulder.
Okay. When is that TCU game?
February 4th.
So coming up in, a couple weeks here.
Yep.
The Frogs and their star power. We'll talk about her when that time comes around. Come rolling into Bramlage. Ethan, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you for your knowledge on women's basketball. That's it for this edition of the Powercat Podcast. We'll be back later this week with a men's edition. That, of course, will be following K-State's game on Wednesday down at Baylor. Our Ryan Gilbert is on his way there as we record this. So I'm glad he's out of town. We're all safer for it. Yep. And we'll also throw in a little Cole Carmody and football and some other topics with the Powercat Podcast. More of them, less of length for them, but still, we're here. And E has made his debut. It's official. Yep. Thanks for watching.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.